everybody. This is Dennis Restaro, and welcome to a bonus episode of the Grounded Reason podcast. Joel will not be with us on this bonus episode, so just me piloting the ship today. Recently, I had the pleasure of interviewing Michael Kirk from efficiencyIsEverything.com. Michael does something very interesting that I thought all the listeners out there would be interested in as well. See, Michael lives his life with a data science approach. In other words, if you work in IT or any type of business where you're dealing with different business processes or systems processes, what people tend to do in business is to collect data on metrics to measure different performance and then make decisions about their business or the system they're architecting based on those numbers and those metrics. And the idea being is if your goal is X and you have measures to, measure X, then making changes to improve those numbers will in turn benefit the goal, or X in this case. So what Michael does is he takes that principle and applies it not just to, his work, he's an engineer, but also to his home life. And he does several interesting things that really where he lives his life by these metrics, goals, and processes. And he basically takes the same approach to his home life that he would if he were, trying to optimize performance at work. So essentially, he's optimizing his life using engineering principles. Ultimately, his goal is to find efficiency in all the actions he takes, whether it be at home or at work. And hence the name of his website, efficiencyIsEverything.com. Now, he applies this principle not only to, eating, but even, having fun. And how I encountered him was through cord cutting, because he's actually a cord cutter as well. And since budgeting is pretty much all numbers, this was really an easy way. Budgeting is really one of the easy ways to apply his principles that you'll find out on his site. And cord cutting, or cable TV was, a gross inefficiency when it comes to the budget when you're looking at, content versus what you're paying for. And we got in touch and decided to, have an interview where we got into, discussing topics like, efficiency in your everyday life and using data science to kind of make choices or decisions in your home life. Now, you might be saying, oh, data science, that sounds like a big boring mess that I don't want to get into. And it's possible that, you might be doing some, in your daily life already. Like, let me give an example of what I mean by, data science. For instance, when you're playing a game, take Monopoly. Now, many will tell you that it's all luck-based, this game. That's not really the case. If you took computer simulation and applied it to the game, you would come up with some concrete strategies on what to do. For instance, the basic gist of the game is you own properties, you develop these properties, people land on those properties, and they pay you money. Now, everyone is doing this at the same time. The goal is to bankrupt everyone else and have the most money. So if you look at, the game of Monopoly in that light, then what you want to do is to have a good return on your investment. So you only want to develop your properties to where you can maximize the return. Now, most people will say, yeah, you just put a hotel on everything. You get monopolies, you put a hotel there. That's the biggest value. You'll get the most money. Okay, I know most people play that way, but really that is not the best way to play once you apply some data science. The best way to play actually is to not build past 3 houses, because that is the best return on your investment for any property on the board. Another one is, and I'll put some cool links on the data statistics done on the game of Monopoly, so you can see this for yourself. And I'm probably ruining the game for anyone, because if everyone played this optimal strategy, then it would be 100% luck. But if you know these few tricks going into a game, you'll probably win more games than not if you have the 5 to 10 hours it takes to actually finish one game of Monopoly. But Most people are always after Boardwalk or Park Place, though, the dark blue colors near Go. That is kind of, while it's an okay strategy, it's not the best strategy. The best strategy is to look at what spots people land on the most. Now, if you just kind of approach it blindly, you're going to say, well, it's a dice. You have the chance of landing on all the spots equally, and not so because of many variables. Sometimes there's cards, community chest and chance cards that put you directly to tell you to go directly to a spot. Then there's jail, to where, jail, there's actually a go to jail spot. So if you land on the go to jail spot, you wind up in the jail space, and you can naturally land on the jail space. So you're going to be spending more time. Oh, yeah. Also, not to mention, if you roll doubles 3 times in a row, you'll also go to jail. And there are 2 cards that send you to jail. So jail is going to be the most landed spot on the game. Now, and the data science plays all that out. If you take that approach of, all right, so if that's the most landed spot on the game, then you want to take the highest probability dice rolls off that spot, 6, 7, 8, and then see where you would land from there. Now, if you think about it in those terms, the most common roll on 2 dice is going to be a 7, which will safely land you on community chest, which is 7 spots away from jail. But your next roll, the most common roll, if you were to roll a 7 again, would land you on Illinois Avenue, and that happens to be the most landed on spot in the entire game. There's also a card that puts you on that spot, which increases those chances. So you're like, okay, the red wins, and it's like, but not necessarily. Those the 6 and the 8 roll is also fairly common. So when you roll one of those coming out of jail, you'll land on St. James Place or Tennessee Avenue. Now, since you need all of the properties within a color group to be able to develop your, optimal 3 houses on, then you're going to have to get all in that color group, which means you want to combine the probabilities of landing on the spaces within each color group. Now, when you do that and add up all the math, you'll find that the best color groups to have, actually, they're almost tied. Orange slightly outdoes red when it comes to return on investment. But if you can get that corner, and build 3 houses on each, then you will dominate most games of Monopoly over time. Now, of course, there is some variability, some random chance, but really the best strategies would be to play that corner, the orange color group, the red color group, only put 3 houses on, each property, and then build out from there. Now, keep in mind, this is just an overall strategy. You want to play, instances, like, for instance, if you're going to buy a house and you see, 3 people are 7 spots away from, some other property, then it would be wise in that instance to, invest there to pick up those situational, strategies. You want to play some situational strategies when you play this game. But I'm just saying at a high level, that's how you could use some data to figure out the best way to do something, in this case, play the game of Monopoly. And Monopoly is not the full topic today, but if you're interested, I'll put those links in the show notes. The reason for that story was to give you an example of how to apply data science to something people normally don't apply any type of data science to, unless you're, a math nerd or a science nerd or maybe world champion of Monopoly. Now, not everybody out there plays Monopoly, but the stuff Michael and I will be talking about, everyone has to do. So I want to introduce Michael Kirk from efficiencyIsEverything.com. He's an engineer, and he is going to explain to us today how we can take some of these data science principles and apply them to our everyday life. Hi, Michael. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
Now, Michael, you essentially use data science to derive the best decision for most choices in your life, from things like eating and chores to working out. Can you give the listeners a little bit of background on what these techniques are and what they look like in practice?
Yeah, so a few years ago, me and my wife, we both happened to get into grad school, and if you guys, I'm sure you know how expensive U.S. education is, and she was getting a doctorate, so we had to find about $100,000 in 3 years to pay for everything.
Whoa!
So we went kind of through everything we spend money on. So one of the things we looked at was rent. And unfortunately, rent, you kind of stuck with where you live, and we were living decently affordable. But then we looked at our food budget, and there's really not any benchmarks for food. So we end up looking at the calories per dollar and protein per dollar of all the food we were eating. We went to the grocery store, basically wrote down calories, servings of everything we bought, and we came home, typed everything up in Excel. And we're kind of surprised. Some of the foods we bought were super expensive, and then other foods, we couldn't believe. Like bread, you get 3,000 calories per dollar eating white bread. So that's one of the highest things you can get made for you. Not that I recommend eating only white bread. The hospital bills when you get scurvy would be pretty expensive.
A lot of it's fortified, so you might be okay.
Yeah, you might get some vitamin A in that. And actually, that's one of the next things I want to look at. I want to look at vitamin per dollar. So without getting too far into it, we're actually at the grocery store writing down every item we can get at the entire grocery store. We're going to kind of see what every item stacks up as, and the different vitamins and volume per dollar, mass per dollar. But that's a long-term thing.
Yeah, so, I mean, really, this came out of like your college bills are kind of eating up most of your funds, so you needed to find a way to eat.
Yeah, and it really ended up not being too bad because we actually got real food out of this. I mean, like we'll have chicken, potatoes, and gravy, fajitas, Alfredo, like real food. But it was just knowing, if you eat chicken, some pork, ground beef, like you get about 50 grams of protein per dollar. And that really is a good source of getting your protein. The only thing that really beats that is lentils, which are 140 grams of protein per dollar, and beans, which is between like 80 and 100 grams of protein per dollar. So really the big key is knowing what foods are really a good value and which ones are kind of expensive.
Yeah. Now, this is your wife, right, that you did this with?
Yeah. So she actually was totally on board. Sort of to my surprise. The only thing was we found out that eating out at restaurants is really a terrible value.
Definitely.
Anytime you eat out, you're getting less than 150 calories per dollar. So really eating out's not that great of a value. And once she heard that, she was she was a little upset about that. But really the big thing we learned is just learn how to cook good food, because over the course of your life, you're talking about saving $250,000 if you can find a way to eat affordable food. So,
and that's calorie per dollar, because there's health benefits there too.
Well, yeah. So you're eating real food. I kind of feel bad when I go to McDonald's and you get an egg and sausage, which is zero vegetables. And this we set aside. It basically costs less than 50 cents for a carbohydrate like rice, bread, noodles.
Right.
So that's really where you get your calories from. And then between chicken and, like I said, pork, milk, even some protein powder, you're spending less than $1 a day on protein. And then we set aside $1.50 for vegetables and spices. And that's really where the flavor and the nutrition comes in.
Is she in the engineering field as well?
She's actually a physical therapist.
Okay, and she was on board with the math right away?
Yeah, she when she saw it being applied, then she really realized how valuable it is.
Okay.
And one of her things, once she realized, she started using some of this stuff herself. And for instance, and this kind of gets into a different aspect of it, but we look at saving time on things, and she really likes having a checklist on the door. So a checklist might not seem like an engineering thing, but when you work in an assembly plant, checklists are everywhere, because when you make a mistake, you're talking about spending hundreds of dollars of company time. So we just have a checklist on the door before she leaves for work, and she loves that. Like, just talk about something very simple that is very easy to apply. She goes through her list. It just says phone, keys, purse, lunch, coffee, badge, jacket. And going through that list every day, she doesn't make a mistake anymore. She used to have to drive home 15 minutes just to grab her purse that she forgot.
That's a good idea because I actually have that problem every morning because I have about 4 or 5 things I need to, make sure I take with me. And my badge. I'm always forgetting my badge for work to get in. So that would really help me out. Now you talked about when it comes to like the data that you have to collect for instance, like the food. You use Excel or is there, are there better tools out there?
So right now I've dabbled in a little bit of programming. So I do have an Android app. If anyone's really interested, I guess send me an email. You can look it up. It's called Food Per Dollar. And I think you'll have to search efficiency is everything food per dollar.
Okay.
And that just, you can type all the stuff in, and then it'll save it as a CSV file in your downloads folder. So it's not really a pretty app, but it does work.
And you can use that CSV and just import it into a spreadsheet program?
Exactly. And then also, so if you go on my website, you can download the Excel file with all the calories per dollar, all the protein per dollar, and you can always fill that in as well. So there's a few little options I have for collecting that.
Great. And I'll put that link in the show notes. So how would you apply something like this to, I don't know, say a topic on our show like cutting the cord? Can you walk me through that or give me, for instance?
Oh yeah. Well, what I've realized is there's a lot of reoccurring costs that come up. And when I first got my own place, I didn't know anything about finances or anything, and I had grown up where my parents always had cable, so I just bought cable and internet, and I think the cable package was like $90 a month.
Right.
Again, me not knowing anything about it, just okay, pay for it. I need TV, right?
And how long ago was that?
I think that was about 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, and it's gone up a lot since then too.
Yeah, I mean, my parents are always talking about, oh, well, we get this package and that package. Not that I ever see them watching it, but yeah, I mean, you take that $90 a month, and in 12 months, over the next 50 years of your life, you're talking about literally $54,000 of cost if you're paying $90 a month. $54,000. That's buying like 2 really nice cars.
And that's not even counting like, putting it into an investment fund or, getting interest off of that money.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're talking, stock market averages 7% return. I mean, that might be $200,000 in your life.
Right. Exactly. And you're saying you just have an internet connection now?
Yep. I spend, I think, $20 or $30 a month. Comcast always jacks that up every few weeks.
Right. So what type of services do you use then to get entertainment? And is there any kind of methodology you use in regard to efficiency when it comes to making those decisions?
Yeah, we use Netflix, YouTube, and just kind of downloaded content. And we're really satisfied with Netflix and YouTube. I think I even pay the premium for YouTube Red, just as we spend a lot of time watching that. And I think it's $10 a month. And I still think, well, $10 a month, at least I'm not paying the $90 a month that companies are charging nowadays.
Exactly. I saw that you had a method to actually get some time back while you're watching movies and television. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, and I really recommend this to anyone. And I have ADD, and I think this is a great way of getting through the 60-minute episodes of Game of Thrones. What we'll do is we'll speed up these shows by about 10%. And at 10%, it's really unnoticeable. You really can't tell that a TV show is any different. If you even watch cable TV, those TV shows are sped up between 10 and 25% right now. So then they could squeeze more commercials in.
That makes sense.
So what we'll do is we'll just speed those up, and for every hour you save about 6 minutes, and you don't notice the difference. You just get done with the TV show sooner, which means you can watch either more TV or, me and my wife will spend that extra time, go on a walk, or maybe indulge on another episode.
Yeah, I mentioned that on the show a few times. Really, well, when you look at it, commercials eat up so much time. If you look at, I've heard, Nielsen says 4 hours, but I've also heard, studies that show 2 hours of how much time people, watch TV per day. And if you look at, 15 minutes of commercials in an hour, and you take that time, say you watch 2 hours a day, and you take that time, the commercial time, over a year, it works out to be like 7 to 8 days.
Oh yeah. So I did some scratch math myself. So I have the average American watches 2 hours of TV a day,
Hmm.
and there's 20 minutes of commercials per hour. That 40 minutes over, say you watch it every day of the year, 365 days a year over the next 50 years, that's 12,000 hours of your lifetime.
That's ridiculous.
It's and that's commercials. And I mean commercials, yeah, that takes up time, but and I like to think that commercials don't affect me, but maybe I do buy some of these trinkets and I spend money on top of that because I'm watching these commercials.
Yeah, that stuff just has a way of worming into your brain. You're walking around, you get some urge to buy something. It's probably because of a commercial you saw like a week back and don't even know it.
Exactly. So instead of having the cable companies and the different networks giving you commercials and speeding up the show so they could squeeze an extra, 5 minutes of commercials in every hour, you could take that time and either be productive, be lazy, just do whatever you want with that extra time. And it really does make a difference. I could not sit through a 60-minute TV show, and now if I'll watch it at 10, 20% speed, you get that thing done in 45 minutes, and it's definitely doable.
Yeah,
And,
I'd like to try that out. I've never done it. I'm curious to see if I could speed it up and still enjoy the show and get that time back.
I will warn. I had a friend say, "Oh, I couldn't do it. It just sounded so weird." Well, I asked him, "Well, how fast did you speed it up?" He said, 50%. I'm
Whoa.
like, "Oh, that's way too much. You can't do that."
Yeah,
So
that's way too
that'll
much.
be my warning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe I'll try 10.
yeah, definitely start with 10.
Yeah, so you've gone over food. What are some other things like I guess something everyone needs to purchase in their life, something like I don't know, health insurance maybe.
Oh,
Could you go into how you'd use your technique with something like that?
so if you guys can hear any warning I have out of this entire show, it'll be look at your health insurance. Your health insurance, if you pick the wrong option, you could be spending $500,000 extra dollars in your lifetime. And even you mentioned a second ago, the interest on that, that might even be more than that.
Definitely.
So if you guys hear anything, health insurance is something to look at. Um,
Yeah.
if it takes you 10 hours to figure out your right health insurance, you take that $500,000 and divide it by 10 hours, and that's probably your highest paying dollar per hour you'll ever have. And health insurance is almost made to be difficult to understand. I feel like they almost go out of their way by they'll have phrases like deductible, max out of pocket. They'll have percentages all across the page, prenatal care, checkup care, copay, and they'll have all sorts of words on there.
Yep. That's how they get you.
And a lot of that, I think, is really just to make it difficult to make a decision.
That's right.
So I'll make a recommendation that when you look at your health insurance, there's really only two words you should really, really look into. And it'll be called either max deductible or max out of pocket.
Yeah.
And that's the most money you'll have to pay for the year. So if you cut your arm off and get cancer in the same year, you don't pay more than that max deductible.
That's good.
So
Good advice.
that's definitely, so that's one of the words. And the other word is premium. And premium means your cost per paycheck. Those are the two really important things. Everything else is really, I almost want to say, to confuse people.
So for something like health insurance, you're really looking at, a dollar value over, the services you're going to get, or is it going to be, worth paying for in the end? Maybe, money and time seem to be the values that you're measuring by.
Yes, definitely. Definitely that's one way of looking at that. You can find a lot of different ways to apply these money per second. And really, the big deal here is how do you optimize your time to save you money, or how do you optimize routines to save you time? Just really looking at that. So health insurance, like I said, if you guys have a chance to look through your health insurance next time it comes up, what I'll recommend is do not discount the cheapest option. The cheapest option often will be your best option. If you can take the savings every month and put that in a savings account, when you have that rainy day that something bad happens, you can take that money and spend it so you can hit your max deductible. And that is where you're getting quite a bit of savings.
I mean, and this applies to, if you're, an average, fairly healthy person.
Actually, I'll even say if you are unhealthy, you are very often better off picking one of the cheaper plans. Really? And that's what almost seems convoluted about it. What people will do is they will pay, say, $500 a month in premiums, and that's, say, $6,000 a year that they just give to the insurance companies. But if your max deductible is $6,000 and you're only paying, $100 a month for your premiums, you can take that savings and every year you save that, and that can go towards your deductible. So even if you are hitting that every single year, you'd still be better off.
Yeah. So essentially, what it sounds like what you need to do is to find a metric to measure an activity, and then make decisions based on maximizing that value of that metric.
Right. So I do this for everything from health insurance, and one of the things I really like doing, I have this thing called fun per dollar.
Okay.
And fun per dollar is probably one of the more quirky things I do. But what I've actually found is it really does line up. Like, a lot of people have the same things they agree upon. So what I'll do there is I'll take the number of minutes of fun you're having. So say I'll take an example. You go to the movies, and it costs you, say, $15. You eat some popcorn, and you see a movie, and the movie was just all right. Maybe like a 7 out of 10 fun.
Okay.
Well, so I do a little equation, and based on how much money you're willing to spend versus how many great experiences you want to have. So I do a little weighted calculation. And what we often find is that things like movies, going to a bar, going to see a concert, actually have relatively low minutes of fun per dollar.
Okay.
But things like hanging out with friends, or just doing amazing experiences. And the best way for me to describe that is my buddy went to a Weird Al concert, and he had an awesome time there.
Yeah, he's great.
He gave that a solid 10 out of 10 fun. He said it was the best thing that's happened in his life. Those kind of things score very high.
Right.
And really the low cost things where you spend time with friends, those score pretty high. But kind of like the little indulges, we found that just going to your generic pop concert, people just didn't find that much fun. Going to the bar or going to a restaurant just scored pretty low. And it was sort of weird, like almost across the board, people had these kind of experiences, and similar cost, similar experience.
So you've taken some data on this?
Yeah, and the difficulty I have is it's very subjective.
Oh, of course.
And then you also get some wacky things like I bought Diablo 3, and I put a disgusting number of hours into that, like maybe 600 hours, and you only spend $60 on the game, and that scores very, very high on the minutes of fun per dollar, even if I only said it was only like a 5 out of 10 fun.
Yeah, it really depends on the replayability of the game, I guess, and how much fun you can get based off how much you can play it.
Yeah, and I actually did a fun little calculation for. I got addicted to one of those like online clicking games, which are free and just kind of hook you. Mm-hmm. And even if it was only like a 1 out of 10 fun, it would be technically like infinity fun per dollar. So
yeah, that sounds like a good way to measure it. When it comes to making a big purchase or something along those lines, like I don't know, maybe like buying a car or house or what have you. Do you have any any ways you've applied this technique or any tricks or any general tips you can give to give people an example of other ways this would work?
Yeah, so if you spend money on cars, like you really enjoy cars, that's something of value to you because you get some enjoyment out of that. But if you're just driving around just to get from one place to another, what I found is if you buy a car that's like 2 or 3 years old, you're getting a car for a fraction of the price that is very high quality that's going to last you many years. So that's something I don't quite have a miles per dollar because each car is different, but I've definitely found that those are good values.
Yeah, if you look at the Blue Book value on how much a car depreciates when you take it off the lot, that I mean, it completely, makes sense.
Oh yeah.
I mean, when it comes to cars, it's like they start depreciating right away.
Yeah, and I every once in a while I have these like guilty pleasures where I just picture myself driving something really nice, and maybe that's something I'll treat myself to. I mean, I do work in the automotive industry, so you always get to see your friends have these cool cars, and maybe one of these days I'll get it. But I'm looking at having kids pretty soon, and I think I might wait to indulge on that.
Yeah, I actually had a question about kids, but I'll get that to that in a minute. When it comes to the car, we spend so much money on it, and really we spend so little time in it relative to other big purchases we make. I mean, you spend like maybe a couple hours a week in it. I really just can't wait until I can subscribe to some type of self-driving car service to come just pick me up whenever I want.
Yeah, I will say, so the self-driving car, I don't care if that thing costs $50,000. I think that'll be something I indulge in because, I had a 2-hour commute every day, and if I could take those 2 hours and be able to do my own activities with that instead of having to drive, I mean that I highly value my time, and I think that would be well worth the cost of it. And a lot of people are saying the self-driving cars may not even be that expensive because you can share them instead of having to actually buy them.
Yeah, exactly. The CEO of Uber just basically just said that like they just bought a fleet of Volvos, self-driving Volvos, and that's the future of Uber is kind of where they're going. So I can totally see, you pay a subscription to have a car just come and get you when you need it. So I see that as probably the future of driving in this country at least.
Oh yeah, and I don't know how far away people are saying these cars are, but working in the industry, there's little chatter back and forth, and I wouldn't be surprised if we had completely autonomous cars in the next 5 years. I know that one of the cars I was working on was looking to have almost completely autonomous in the next 2 years. With just a few things that the driver would have to do.
Right. Yeah. Actually, Joel and I had when we talked about Internet of Things, we talked a little bit about this and how it's really the science is there. There's a couple glitches they got to get through. But for the most part, I mean, it's almost ready for prime time at this point, and I wouldn't be shocked either if it's happening in the next 5 years. I think the biggest hurdle is the politics and probably the getting over the human fear of the unknown new thing that happens anytime big change occurs.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember back in my engineering school, we had to make our own little self-driving RC car, and we had to do that in the course of 2 hours. So I can tell you the technology, it's got to be perfect, and I think that's why it's taking so long.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the big fear that once one thing bad happens, even if it's out of hundreds of millions of miles and it's way better than drivers, there's going to be some people that they old people vote, and they might be afraid of robots driving their cars.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned possibility of kids, and I was wondering because I have two kids. Are you going to try using these sort of techniques on your children, or do you think these would
Uh,
work with kids?
so my first thought with this, with having kids, is the diaper changing, because it seems like that's something you got to do multiple times a day.
Hmm.
You got to walk your kid from wherever the heck they're at to the changing table. You got to open up the cabinet, grab your stuff out, put it on the table, close the cabinet. Do the diaper changing, open up the cabinet again, put the stuff back away. And I thought that really does apply to kind of my morning routine where, I used a process flow chart on my morning routine to make it more streamlined. So you try to reduce steps. When you open up that cabinet, that might only take you 2 seconds, but 2 seconds opening, 2 seconds closing. You got to put the stuff away, 2 seconds opening, 2 seconds closing. That's 8 seconds a few times a day over the course of the entire year, over the course of your entire time you're getting ready in the morning, or in this case, you're having kids. and they have to get their diaper changed. I mean, that's actual minutes, that's actual hours of your life. You're just opening and closing cabinets.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. What do
so,
you what about when they get a little older? Are you gonna, hit them with the fun per dollar? No, you can't do that. Not enough fun per dollar in that activity.
so I have thought about kind of what you would do, if they wanted to do something sort of extraordinary. And there is something I will say about experiences. Like we just went to Italy,
Hmm.
and we probably spent a few $1,000s just going over there in flights, and fun per dollar. Yeah, that might work on your day-to-day activities, but the experiences are really something.
I'm
And
gonna say some things are priceless.
yeah, some things are beyond
So you really,
measurement.
at that point, you really can't put a value on it, or if it's an infinite, that's an infinite value at that point. So this, drive in your life to measure yourself, is it out of productivity?
It might sound like things are pretty meticulous in my life, but if I had OCD, this might be really bad. But instead, I think I'm just very lazy. So when I try to get my morning routine down, it's not because I want to spend so much extra time being productive. A lot of it's just so I can wake up a little bit later and uh, spend more time doing things I like, or spend more time doing nothing at all. Because I really do enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of, I live by like a similar principle where it's more like efficient slacking, where I just make sure that when I expend effort, I put it in the right places to get the most out of it. That's kind of the motto I live by.
Yeah, and if anyone's looking to save a little bit of time, here and there, the big thing I would think about is when you're, say, doing your morning routine, ask yourself, when are you just waiting for something to happen? Like you're waiting for the shower to warm up. My solution to the shower warming up is I actually use shower crayons to mark where on the shower um, is warm, like the temperature I like. That way, you never make the mistake. It's always the right temperature just by moving the handle to that right spot. And I'm doing something while I'm waiting for the shower to warm up, and just making that kind of conscious effort. That does save you, 30 seconds or a minute every single day of your life. So yeah, that kind of efficient slacking. I really like it. I probably get an extra 10 minutes sleeping in every day because I kind of went through my morning routine and looked, hey, when am I walking back and forth? Why am I walking to the closet again? Get
Right.
things right the first time.
Yeah. So do you think that this would work with somebody who is kind of averse to doing math?
Oh, absolutely. I think I think really anyone is the expert of their own routine. In the factory, we don't actually do a lot of this stuff ourselves. We'll go to an assembly line employee and say, hey, you do this job every single day. Where are you spending all your time? Like, take us through your routine. And they'll say, given the cabinet example, we had an example where they just said, we have to walk all the way to this trash can. The solution, we just move the trash can closer to them. And now, instead of them walking over, spending the 2 seconds to throw away some scrap material, they move their hand from one place just to the left side of them and drop stuff in the trash can. So, I mean, anyone can do this. And, you are the expert of your own life. You can look at your routine. You can look at, how you're eating, and you can optimize these things because you know what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's really a matter of applying those principles you do at work at home. So do you have, before we wrap this up, do you have any advice or tips that you'd like to give to the listeners out there to help them, maybe if they want to try doing some of this at home, maybe a resource or something you can point it to?
Yeah, well, I will say the health insurance thing is definitely something to look at. But if you go on my website, you'll see the calorie per dollar list. You can download it as an Excel file. I even have some suggestions on how to make a meal. And really, it's not difficult. A lot of it's just you pick one of the things you want to eat, you Google a recipe, and pick something that's highly rated, and you can eat quite efficient. For about $1,000 a year. So yeah, definitely check that on the website. There's a few ways to save time. If you want to know how to speed up Netflix, VLC Media Player or YouTube, I have guides on how to do that on the website. And I even have a little trick on how to save time sleeping every day, which we take a 20-minute nap. So if you want to hear more about that, definitely check out the website. There's all sorts of free resources. And as far as the things I'm selling a book that just goes through how I made my life efficient. And I also have a cookbook with a bunch of recipes. I have 28 recipes, each set aside by week. So it has all the ingredients. So when we go to the grocery store, you just go eat an entire week of recipes, or you can just look at the book and choose some recipes, and you'll be eating for about $1,000 a year.
Michael, thanks for stopping by today and sharing all these tips and tricks. It's really probably helpful to a lot of people out there. We really appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I like to get people saving money, and I hate to hear people wasting money on things they could definitely make improved. So, hey, I keep up this show because that cable bill, man, that's $50,000 in people's lives. So,
yeah, I mean, we'll keep making them as long as people keep listening. So, Michael, thanks again for coming in today. We really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you.
That was Michael Kirk from efficiencyIsEverything.com with some very helpful tips for everybody. I brought him in because I really thought that what he's talking about could really help out some people with budgeting and just everyday tasks in my life, your life. We got to do lots of stuff from eating healthy to eating efficiently and affordably. Having checklists for just daily routines to save time. We got into cutting the cord and how all these techniques, will drive you to that conclusion. And even if you are a cord cutter, possibly how to measure the value you're even getting into that. You can use these techniques for buying health insurance, buying a car, even measuring your fun levels and applying metrics to just different activities you enjoy to see if you're spending your money to get your optimal enjoyment in life. And we even had a little fun and to see how this would work if you try to apply this stuff to children. But go out and check his site. It's efficiencyIsEverything.com. I will definitely put it in the show notes. If you have any, questions or comments about today's show, you can give me an email at podcast@groundedreason.com. Send a tweet at Grounded Reason. Go to the Facebook page, or you can give us a call at 605-TALK-GRP. Leave a voicemail with your name, and we'll give you some credit and maybe even play you on the show. So I hope you enjoyed having Michael on today. I know I did. Please, if you're enjoying the show, give us a review on iTunes. Remember to subscribe, because the more people subscribe, the higher we go in the rankings list and the more visibility the show gets, which means we'll keep making episodes. Join Joel and I on Monday when we sit down and compare all of the DVR options out there for cord cutters. It's one people have been asking for, so we decided to put one together. We will see you then.